Hello, John.
Yeah, Oliver.
So today we're going to talk about there was a program on, or I think it was RTE or one of the TV stations, and it was about priests. I think it was about vocations and religion in general, probably. But Ardal O Hanlon was on it, and he was talking away about the priesthood, and yeah, I don't think he's that religious himself. But that's what we're going to talk about anyway. So if you want to give me your thoughts, please.
Yes, well, the fact is that we had a great supply of priests here in my lifetime, and so much so that parishes had more priests than they sometimes needed. And some of the priests that were ordained to the different dioceses, because there was an excess of priests, they were often sent to Britain or some other place because it was regarded as mission territory, and they were trained and priests and had been ordained. And some of them went to Birmingham and other parts of London, and they did a great job because there would have been a lot of Irish went there from the 50s onwards, over 1 million. And so they need to be nourished, and the faith took root to practice the Catholic faith. And as far as I know, their descendants still do. Maybe not as strong, because what happened with the Catholic faith is they made too many changes. Vatican II didn't orchestrate all these changes, but for some reason or other, certain bishops and priests took more out of it than was actually in it. And so there's a picture of priests that were, you can see there's plenty of them there, and that's only a small section. And they were in Paris that must have gone there for some final training, and all fine priests. And we had missions, and we helped to establish the Catholic faith in throughout the world, in Africa especially, and did a great job because that's where the faith now is strong, stronger than in Europe. Because of the changes and that the bishops implemented. And as Jesus said in the St. Luke's Gospel that I'm reading, for those who much has been given, much is expected. And if the apostles, which the bishops are descendant of, if they behaved like the bishops do, we'd have no Catholic faith. So that's the background to the business of the shortage of priests. It was in some ways the fault of the bishops and those in charge. Oftentimes, those in charge in any business, even, often are not fit for the job.
I know, but
And
if we if
business
we
failed. So,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
if we look, John, at like compare the Catholic Church with the Orthodox Church, okay, and in the Orthodox Church, of course, you can marry and you can have children as a priest, and it's lovely, you know. I mean, I've been to the Orthodox Church because that's where I go. But the thing is, but what would you think of allowing the priests to marry in Ireland and have children? Is that a
Well, you
no-no?
see, that's another story. The Orthodox, to give them their due, they have that, and but also they didn't change their. They still have their traditions that they've had down the centuries,
That's right.
and they faced the tabernacle that they have. And I think they have stations at the cross because they're associated to the Catholic faith. And you've got different Orthodox denominations, the Romanian, well, it was originally the Greek Orthodox, and then it morphed into the Russian Orthodox, and the Ukrainian now have their own Orthodox. But it's a lovely faith, and there's a bit of jealousy, like, unfortunately, human beings suffer from that. But the thing is that RTE did the program, as you just mentioned there, with a former member of the Father Ted, Ardal O Hanlon, who was a kind of a priest that was a bit on the simple side. And then there was another priest, an alcoholic. So it was a very successful series, and portrayed that type of thing. But he did a program about it, and he doesn't actually practice Catholic faith, choose that. But so, my way of thinking, if you're going to be talking about any faith, the Catholic faith or the Muslim faith or the Orthodox faith, I think it's as well to have a practicing person because they will have a more nuanced and informed view of it. If it's a person that's not actually just talking about these things and are not a practicing Muslim or a practicing, it just seems to me to apply to the Catholic faith for some reason. Now, that's my opinion that they don't treat it with the respect that it's due. Every religion is due us respect. The Protestant religion needs to respect the other religions, like the Catholic faith and the Muslim faith and the Orthodox faith. People are hoping to be able to be saved and be in heaven if they live their lives in a proper way. The Catholic faith, the way, the truth, and the life. But other ones have good programs, but when we're discussing in the Christian TV, we'll be doing it in a very objective way. When you make too many changes in anything, it can be successful if it's done right, or it can be a disaster. One example of that in the company I worked for in the life insurance for a number of years, after changing, because jobs could close and that, and you really still had to survive. And I was in the Royal Liver, a very successful life insurance company, providing a service to ordinary people that had books and they were able to have their children insured and themselves, not for big amounts, but enough to sort of cover if there was a death in the family to be able to pay for it. That's actually why the Royal Liver was established by usually, I think, Irish people in Liverpool. When people died, it was a friendly association to help them to pay for the funerals and that type of thing. So it had a good start, and then it become very successful. But like everything else, management towards the latter end was not the management that come up through the Royal Liver ranks, which was normal way, and they were very prudent. Some fella, there was a banker, and he started spending money as if it was gone out of fashion. And Royal Liver had more assets than anything else in this country and everywhere. And he managed to get rid of them and close the company, giving cars to people and salaries and this, that, and the other. Seemed very good, but it wasn't good.
Can I ask you, John?
Yeah.
The program that you seen in RTE, was it like, was it a negative towards the Catholic Church, or was it kind of in
Well,
between, or was it?
it was negative. Yeah, negative. It didn't portray it as being a force for good, in the sense that it's if you practice it, you have a chance of saving your immortal soul, and that's the best way to do if you're baptized as a Catholic. That is the most important thing that can happen, even when you're a baby. When you're baptized, I was baptized 4 days after I was born, and so then you're that's your entry. You can be baptized twice. You're baptized, and then when you make your first Holy Communion, that's the first important sacrament that you avail of, and then confirmation is a sacrament, making you what they call a soldier of Christ, and you're confirmed, and then you're expected to practice your Catholic faith. Now, people, for one reason or other, themselves or whatever it is, it doesn't mean that they were in bad homes or something, which can happen in some places. But some people just for one reason or other they fall away. Maybe with the people that are associating with, because there was an old story. I'll tell you who you are with the company you keep. So these are little rules of thumb. Uh,
Or like Benjamin
and,
Franklin. Benjamin Franklin said,
yeah,
lie down with the dogs, get up with the fleas."
correct. Well, you see, that's an example. And thank God I was fortunate as I was growing up all over the place, Dublin, Howth, and then Boyle. and then here, there, and yonder. And it actually nourished because it was the foundation was there, and I tried to practice it. You don't always succeed because your life can take turns here, there, and yonder, and you can encounter crosses that you can do without. You're not going looking for them, but because they come your way, whether you like it or
Well,
not.
do you know what?
But you
So
because it's like holding on to a raft. You don't want to drown, or holding on to something. You don't want to drown with the world. You don't want to get into thinking that you can be successful here or all this type of thing.
yeah,
So
I just want to.
no, so this individual would have had a successful that did this program, this Ardal O Hanlon, a successful career. But success is one thing, but if your faith is weak or you're not passionate and so on and so forth for your own reason, whatever, we won't question. The people can do what they like; they have a free will. But be that as it may, I think it behoves the people that produce programs to make sure that the person that's presenting this is actually practicing the faith that they profess to be investigating. In other words, the Catholic faith should be a practicing Catholic, the Protestant faith should be a practicing Protestant, and the Muslim faith should be practicing Protestant. I don't think Muslims would be too pleased if there was a Muslim talking about it that wasn't actually practicing it.
No, you're
So
totally
you can
right. Yeah.
see, yeah. So that's what I'm saying, and because there are hopeful signs. There are bishops now beginning to speak out. I'm doing one a program about a very faithful bishop, Bishop Joseph Strickland, Joseph E. Strickland. Often what the E was stand for. We'll find out about that in due course, because I'd like to know what the second name is. We're all Christian. I was Christian, John Augustine,
Hmm.
and then I took the confirmation with Christopher. Now, at 12, we didn't know that I was going to be doing a lot of traveling because St. Christopher was the patron saint of travelers. So, kept me safe, even though I had an odd squeak here and there. Don't forget that. Uh, so, um,
I
so
think.
I paint a more positive picture that there's light at the end of the tunnel. We have the Latin Rite Mass celebrated in a lot of churches, and vocations are plentiful. It's where priests have changed, the bishops rather, in their lack of wisdom, changed things with the priests now facing the congregation, and it's back to the tabernacle. That's when you die as a Catholic, you're facing east or facing where you're not having your back on where it should be. And the same way when you're saying Holy Mass, the proper way is to face the tabernacle.
Hmm.
Because people, when they're at Mass, they haven't got their back to the tabernacle, they're facing it, but the priest is he has his back to us.
So
Now, that'd be one thing that I would be in Christian TV. The Holy Mass would be celebrated with the priest facing the tabernacle in Latin. And also, if it's said in English, that will be always facing the tabernacle. And the hymns that will be sung, like what I heard there this morning, we've a choir now, thank God, in the church, and the song ones that I know,
hmm
the song Sacred Heart of Jesus that I sing, the song three hymns or four, and I knew them all. And what a great sight! We've a good priest now that's doing things in the traditional way, and people are going up now to the altar to receive Holy Communion. Now, some are receiving it on the hand, but they're all up at the altar.
hmm
Isn't that a good sign? You don't see that in other places. Now, they still have Eucharistic ministers, but it's everybody's going up to the altar. And I was up at the altar and got it on the tongue.
Now,
That's the way I want it. So, do
Strickland.
you see now what I'm saying? That there are vocations. Eh?
I do, yeah. Um, so the Bishop Strickland, he's Joseph Edward Strickland.
Oh, Edward, is it? Edward. Eamon. But that's the Irish. Edward. Uh, Yeah, well, there you are. Well, Joseph
Now,
is, anybody thinking a good name.
I would say, look,
And
that they chose Ardal O Hanlon because to talk about the Catholic or the Christian faith because of his father Ted persona, because he's so famous and people can relate to him. But unfortunately, as you say, he's not in any way religious, or it appears he's not religiously inclined. Um,
no,
so unfortunately, they probably picked the wrong person. But I want to say to you, John, about look, even from a secular point of view and from a business point of view, that for RTE and for the Irish government to get involved in religious affairs, it's very, very bad for the coffers. It's very bad for their bank balance, you know, because if you look at the amount of money the Catholic Church brings in tourism, okay, and they're shooting themselves in the
yeah,
foot. And if you look at the role that the church played in the pubs of Ireland, okay, what used to happen in Ireland was people would go to the pub. So they go to mass. They would after mass, then you'd have an entire family would go over to the pub. Daddy and Mammy would have a pint or two. They'd drive home, even though they weren't supposed to back in the day. Well, they probably the drink driving laws were different back then, but they would drive home and then they'd come back after dinner at about 5 o'clock, and they'd spend the evening in the pub. So the pub was kind of centered around the church in Ireland in a lot of ways, you know. So it was great for the
yeah.
economy, and it kept the entire community inside in the town. Now what happens is very, very few people go to mass, and they're at home on social media, you know. So it's a different world.
Well, you see, um, we have to say that the silence of the bishops is just an absolute amazement.
Yeah,
That this calling as following the apostles. If the apostles were doing what they're doing, there'd be no Catholic faith.
yeah.
Anybody else doing what they were doing, there'd be no faith. So the only way for to nourish the faith is for those shepherds, bishops, to speak out and stand up for it. And when the state is doing what it's doing, um, the killing of the innocent and abortion and various other issues, and focusing on what are perceived to be problems with the nuns and the priests and all the rest of it, forgetting that it wasn't for the nuns, we wouldn't have hospitals because they were running hospitals when the state hadn't got the money to run on them.
Hmm.
They were running hospitals and running them very successfully. And so, but they were treated now abominably like the sister charity that ran St. Vincent's. And it was for the poor that ran these for to give them some help medical. And they also did a lot of other things. Yeah, but like in everything else, you get a bad apple here and there in these homes that there were people might have been suffered unduly because you get an evil one. And the culture was very peculiar damn times. It was cruelty. I mean, when you were in school, when I was in school, you were getting involved because you didn't know this, that, or the other. And you weren't stupid, but just because you couldn't ream it off, because you weren't an encyclopedia. So there was a lot of that kind of thing, not by anybody in particular. It was just the way it was. And it shouldn't have been like that. But no, I didn't have any grudges about it. But I tell you, I didn't like it when I was getting it.
Hmm.
Yeah, but no grudges or this, that, or the other, or spend me time. And everybody was getting it, so I was no different. I don't know anybody that escaped. So there were bad times all round. But to pick out sometimes these anti-Catholic people in the government and in the state, they support things that wouldn't get a chance because the Constitution doesn't support what they are doing. The Constitution is very explicit as regards God and
Hmm.
and about the mankind having a higher purpose. So it's very good, the Constitution, but they're actually going against it, and they believe they're having some kind of a law to come out of. a referendum to sort of distinguish that there won't be a father and a mother will be called something else other than a father and a mother. That's a recipe for disaster. So, anyways, it's just that we need people to stand up, and I think our Christian TV Ireland, so necessary, will be certainly standing up on the truth, because the truth sets you free. This watering down and this other kind of ideology doesn't do anything for anyone.
Yeah, you're talking. Thank you very much, John.
Thanks very much, Oliver.